In Mexican folklore, El Cucuy is a mythical monster that comes out at night to lure victims into dark alleys and kill them. Tony Ferguson has become the personification of such a supernatural creature in the MMA world. Outside the octagon, he is an ordinary man, a beloved husband, a loving father. But as soon as Tony enters the cage, he turns into a completely different creature. Incredibly fast, amazingly accurate, and inventive, Tony El Cucuy Ferguson takes an opponent in his sights and doesn't let go until he has sucked all the life force out of him. This guy is a real ticking time bomb that never knows when it will explode. He is the lightweight division's nightmare, and at the same time one of the best fighters of all time. Today is about him and only him. Tony was born in the town of Oxnard in Southern California. However, he spent his entire childhood in Muskegon, Michigan. The boy did not know his own father. However, his stepfather played this role perfectly. Not only did he give his stepson his surname Ferguson, but he also contributed to his hobbies in every way possible. It was Tony's stepfather who first brought him to the sports section. After moving to Michigan, he believed that it would be easier for the boy to settle in and make friends. But Tony exceeded all his expectations. During his school and university years, he managed to prove himself in 3 different sports: American football, baseball, and wrestling. And when young Ferguson was in college, he became the NCAA national champion twice, first in the 152-pound weight class, and a few years later in the 165-pound weight class. Soon, Tony became interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and started working on his boxing technique. And then he wanted more, to go into the cage and become famous all over America. Since 2008, when Tony first entered the octagon, and until 2010, he managed to hold 12 fights, losing only 2 of them. But the ambitious newcomer dreamed of more. He wanted to get into the most powerful promotion, which was becoming increasingly popular, both in the USA and around the world, the UFC. And in 2011, his dream came true. Tony was selected for The Ultimate Fighter 13. In Tough, Tony joined the team of MMA legend Brock Lesnar, and from the very first episodes of the show, became its most scandalous contestant. Ferguson managed to attract attention even with his appearance. When the rest of the team came to training in uniform, he showed up in a shirt and tie. Tony also failed to coexist peacefully with the other teammates. Once he got into a fight with a neighbor over a trivial matter, turning the whole dorm against him. Ferguson fought his first tough fight against Justin Edwards and immediately went down in show history. No one expected such an outcome. Finding himself on his back after Justin's takedown, Tony first landed a few hard elbows. When his opponent decided to get up, Tony knocked him out by throwing his right leg forward. This incredible axe kick caused a storm of emotions even among Dana White himself. Ferguson also defeated his next opponent, Ryan McGilvray, knocking him out with a counter uppercut. And then he brutally dealt with Chuck O'Neal, turning his face into a continuous bloody mask. Tony also decided to finish his final fight with Ramsey Najem in his own style. At the end of the first round, he hit an unusual combination of left hook and uppercut, and his opponent instantly fell to the canvas. Such a brilliant ending brought him a victory on Tough, a contract with the UFC, and Tony's first career knockout of the night bonus. Tony decided to start his career in the UFC in the lightweight division, so he lost 15 pounds before his first fight under the promotion's auspices. His opponent was Aaron Riley, a fighter with 15 years of experience in professional MMA and a clean 30-13 record. A tough challenge for a newcomer, but Tony coped with it perfectly. The fight took place as part of UFC 135 in September 2011, just 4 months after Ferguson won The Ultimate Fighter. But despite the tougher weight cut, Tony came into the cage radiating energy. And in the middle of the first round landed the punch that decided the fate of the fight. Ferguson landed a series of uppercuts, breaking Aaron's jaw.
stopped after the first responded to the shot. You are right, that
Only thanks to his strength of character did Riley manage to hold out until the end of the round. The fight was stopped by the doctor's verdict. That's how Tony got his first victory in the UFC. Having won another convincing victory over Ivis Edwards, Tony was already dreaming of measuring his strength against fighters of the higher rank. So he was offered a chance to fight one of the top fighters of the time, Dennis Holman. This fight was supposed to take place in May 2012 at UFC on Fox 3. However, shortly before the fight, Holman was replaced by Diego Tavares, who later also withdrew due to injury. In the end, Tony was replaced by the dynamic and unpredictable Michael Johnson. Already in the first round, Johnson began to outplay Ferguson due to his speed. He even managed to send El Cucuy into a knockdown. And after the second 5-minute mark, Tony's arm was already broken, the result of an unsuccessful attempt to block Johnson's middle kick. Ferguson continued to fight to the end, but he was not destined to win. All the judges gave Johnson the upper hand. Tony's first defeat in the UFC, which was not only a blow to his ego, but also forced him to undergo 3 surgeries and almost 1.5 years of rehabilitation. After suffering a complicated ulnar fracture, Tony only returned to the cage in October 2013. It was then that he met Mike Rio at UFC 166. Mike, a titled wrestler, had only 2 fights in the UFC, one of which he lost. Tony was clearly out of his league and only worsened his record in the promotion. It took El Cucuy 2 minutes to finish Rio. He blocked Mike's takedown and skillfully applied a Darce choke. Later, Tony admitted that he had long dreamed of finishing his opponent with this technique. By the way, it was for the victory over Mike Rio that Tony Ferguson first received the Submission of the Night bonus. He also reasserted his rights to a place at the top of the UFC lightweight division. The ambitious UFC debut of former Deep champion Kansanori Kikuno met Tony at UFC 173 in May 2014. However, when he entered the cage, the Japanese fighter didn't realize the trouble he was in. El Cucuy was charged with another early victory, and for the first seconds of the fight, he began to put pressure on Kikuno. The newcomer was quite shocked by Ferguson's intemperance. Tony showed his opponent with a hail of punches, which he politely accepted, not even having time to dodge or block. Already in the 3rd minute of the first round, Kikuno began to run away from Ferguson, which he skillfully used. He grabbed his opponent and performed a perfect slam. Tony tried to apply a Darce choke, but he took a disadvantageous position and the grip was weak. However, this episode finally exhausted the Japanese fighter. A 10-second exchange in stand-up, and he was already flying to the canvas, hit by Tony's right hook. Kansanori didn't get up again, and Ferguson sat on the cage, celebrating his next victory. After Tony defeated Danny Castillo by split decision and choked out knockout artist Abel Trujillo, he was finally back in the big championship race. The UFC 184 tournament was approaching, scheduled to take place in Los Angeles, just 50 miles from Tony's hometown of Oxnard. And Ferguson had long dreamed of performing in front of his home audience. Unfortunately, none of the opponents he was interested in were available for the fight. Then Tony was offered to go into the cage against UFC veteran Gleison Tibau. This fight did not affect his position in the rankings, but Ferguson agreed. El Cucuy dealt with the famous Brazilian in less than 3 minutes. As soon as the bell rang, Tony began to methodically push Gleison to the cage, although he missed a few juicy deuces. In the second minute of the fight, Tony intercepted the Brazilian's leg during a kick and skillfully executed a ground and pound. Despite the heavy blows, Gleason managed to get up, but El Cucuy had already tasted blood. He pressed on his opponent, not giving him a chance to breathe after a tense episode, and finished him back to the cage. The Brazilian then tried to get out of the corner by applying a takedown, but Tony noticed it in time and stopped Gleason. He took the Brazilian back and finished him with a brilliant rear naked choke. El Cucuy's 5th consecutive victory and the first performance of the night bonus, and all of this in front of his compatriots. Having been ranked 13th in the lightweight division, Tony finally got a top fighter as his opponent. However, was not going through the best moment in his career. Josh Thompson was on a 2-fight losing streak, so his fate in the UFC now depended entirely on Tony. Thompson wanted to regain his lost credibility at all costs and was the first to attack, but all his takedown attempts ended in nothing. Tony would twist out of the grip like a snake and instantly return to the stand. Subsequently, Ferguson switched to leg kicks, and a minute before the end of the first round, he jumped out to meet his opponent with a flying knee. However, after this incredible move, Tony found himself on the canvas and endured Josh's punches until the bell sounded. In the second 5-minute round, Ferguson completely seized the initiative. He began to close the distance and use elbow strikes. It was with this kick that Tony sent his opponent to the canvas. After the brutal ground and pound, Josh looked extremely confused. So when the fight moved back to the stand-up, he missed a hard elbow from Ferguson and suffered an eyebrow dissection, but El Cucuy was unstoppable. He managed to take his opponent to the ground and throw his trademark elbows to the head from guard. This episode ended with a Kimura. However, Tony failed to complete the hold. In the final round, Ferguson worked at a distance and sometimes adding elbows. Finally turned his opponent's face into a bloody wound. For El Cucuy, this fight ended in a unanimous decision victory and another bonus for performance of the night. And then this brutal knee. The victory over Thompson secured Tony's place in the top 10 of the division. The UFC planned to match him with no less talented prospect, Khabib Nurmagomedov. However, the Russian was injured, and Edson Barboza replaced him. The fight started with a dynamic exchange of blows. In an attempt to turn the tide of the fight, Tony flew to the floor and tried to perform an Imanari roll. But he found himself in a hopeless position, and out of desperation, hit Barboza with a forbidden upkick to the head. For this, El Cucuy was deducted a point, but he didn't seem to care. Tony continued his attack with an uppercut and a powerful front kick. Edson fought back with hard punches to the body, finishing the combination with his favorite heel kick. But Ferguson was not deterred. He had a goal, and nothing else mattered. At the beginning of the second 5-minute period, Tony landed a hard elbow and cut his opponent's face open. And although he was also hurt pretty badly, El Cucuy didn't give up trying to finish his opponent. He again went for an Imanari roll and fed the Brazilian with elbow strikes on the ground. And when he returned to the stand, he hit a spinning back elbow into his opponent's bloody face. Edson accelerated the end of the fight himself. He took a risk and rushed for a takedown, but Tony seized the initiative and applied his favorite Darce choke. Another brilliant victory and a fight of the night bonus for El Cucuy. 4 months after the fight with Venata, Tony met Rafael dos Anjos in the octagon. This fight took place as part of the Tough Latin America 3 finals. For El Cucuy, it was the first main event since his own victory in The Ultimate Fighter, and an opportunity to claim a victory over the former lightweight champion, who was currently ranked second in the top of the division. El Cucuy started the fight extremely cautiously. He kept dos Anjos at a distance, not daring to launch a swift attack. Rafael, on the other hand, dried Tony's legs with hard low kicks, one of which knocked him down, taking the first round.
chances are in position.
In the second round, Tony had already understood his opponent's tactics and began to act more confidently. He moved forward, actively working with his feet and dodging the former champion's swinging hooks. And the elbows in close, which have already become El Cucuy's trademark, left bloody marks on his opponent's face. If by the end of the third 5-minute round the Brazilian still managed to get Tony with his powerful punches, in the championship rounds, Ferguson took control of the initiative. He chased Rafael all over the octagon, breaking him down in the stand-up and always trying to get a painful armbar through the Imanari roll. When the bell rang, Dos Anjos' bloody face spoke for itself, so no one was surprised by the judges' unanimous decision in favor of Ferguson. This victory was the 9th in a row for El Cucuy's undefeated streak. Tony also met Kevin Lee by chance. The then lightweight champion Conor McGregor decided to take a break for his career. Therefore, the UFC offered Ferguson and Nurmagomedov to fight for the interim championship. The long-awaited fight was supposed to take place in March 2017 at UFC 209, but force majeure happened again. Khabib dropped out due to problems with weight cutting. He was hospitalized on the eve of the weigh-in, so it was too late for Tony to find another opponent. The fight for the belt was postponed to October, and Ferguson chose Kevin Lee as his opponent. Kevin was much younger than Tony and was considered one of the most talented newcomers to the division. He was coming off a 5-fight win streak and could have caused El Cucuy a lot of problems, but Ferguson wasn't going to miss his first real chance to become a champion. After spending the first 3 minutes of the fight in the stand-up, the rivals moved to the ground, where Kevin quickly took the mount and smashed Tony's face in the rest of the round, occasionally connecting with elbows. But already in the second round, it became clear that the explosive Lee had serious endurance problems. He began to slow down, while El Cucuy unleashed his demons and steadily attacked his opponent. And at the end of the second 5-minute mark, he hit a jewel-like elbow that left Kevin just floating. From that moment on, Tony took complete control of the situation. Lee realized that he had no chance against Ferguson in the stand-up, so throughout the third round, he methodically tried to drag El Cucuy into the ground. But Tony didn't give up even there. Even when he was on his back, he was hitting hard elbows right into his opponent's head. A minute before the end of the third round, Ferguson went for an armbar, but Kevin didn't give up. Then Tony switched to a triangle choke, which eventually forced his opponent to tap. The dream came true. The championship belt was on Tony's waist, and even though this title was only temporary, in the eyes of the fans, he was definitely a real champion. The victory over Donald Cerrone was the last in El Cucuy's career. He still willingly accepts new challenges and continues to enter the octagon against the division's top fighters. But in his last 5 fights, he was frankly unlucky. And even though Tony Ferguson's career peak is behind him, this guy has forever etched his name in MMA history. His 12-fight win streak is still a record for the lightweight division. His incredible talent and true fighting spirit make any representatives of the new generation of mixed martial arts humbly lower their heads. As for El Cucuy's opponents, many of them obviously still have nightmares about the minutes spent in the cage with this unstoppable monster. Subscribe to our channel and enjoy the best episodes from the world of fighting and mixed martial arts. Also, don't forget to like and comment. Help us make our content even better. See you in the next video.